Are mountain biking and e-mountain biking different sports? If so, what does that mean for the future of mountain biking?
Nice job.
So I've been exploring this topic with mountain bikers and e-bikers for a while, and for the most part, I've kind of drawn a blank. I think it's because it's generally assumed that eMTB is just an add-on or kind of natural progression of regular mountain biking. After all, most of the eMTBs you and I see being ridden are on trails dominated by analog or acoustic or whatever you want to call them, mountain bikes. If anything, here in the PNW, you see most eMTBs on gnarly trails as opposed to, say, classic cross country or all mountain single track. So, why bother raising the question at all? Well, that's because there appears to be a good case to be made that eMTB will evolve into a separate sport. There's always going to be crossover, of course, but as for eMTBs and MTBs mixing and matching out on the same trails, that to me is the $64,000 question. $64,000 being what we're going to be paying for those high-end eMTBs if current trends continue. Now, I'm coming at this question from 3 decades of mountain biking, so yeah, I'm definitely old school and figure that into my perspective for sure. If I was a teenager or 20 something, I'd probably have a totally different opinion. But here's what happened. After several years of eMTB skepticism on my part, not I wasn't particularly opposed to them. It's just, hey, that's not for me. I was finally persuaded to get an e-bike a year ago just to try it out. I know I went for the best bike I could find, the Santa Cruz Bullet, but after 6 months of pandemic waitlist status, I bailed on that and picked up a Specialized Turbo Levo Pro. I put a bunch of miles on it over the summer. Well, I was still riding my Spot Ride cross-country bike and my Bronson Mini Enduro setup, alternating among the three just for variety's sake, if nothing else. And I expected that once I started eMTBing, I'd continue down the eMTB yellow brick road or trail. But that hasn't happened, and it triggered in me the whole notion that maybe, mountain biking and e-biking are different. Sort of like how downhill skiing and cross-country skiing are different, or kayaking versus jet skiing. Maybe the different equipment, different experience, they appeal to different mindsets. What I found is that while I can certainly ride all my favorite trails on both e-bikes and MTBs, the experience I get is different enough that I kind of think twice about what bike I'm going to take out on the ride that day. Now, what makes them different? Well, first, obviously, is the weight factor. The Levo clocks in at just under 50 pounds. My other bikes are under 30 pounds. And, while the Levo is fine at just bulldozing, it can drop off just about anything. And, you can even get a little air on it once in a while. It just lacks the agility and whippiness, the playfulness of my other MTBs. This is despite the Levo being a mullet with the best balance and response of any e-bike I've ridden. I actually done a whole separate review on the Levo Pro. It's a great e-bike. And its geometry is even more trail/enduro than my 27.5 Bronson. So really the only difference is weight, but that's a big one. Weight can be an asset if you're just busting over everything, of course, but it's always going to get in the way of the fun factor. Now, there's the motor too. This matters on really just one aspect, climbing. You need the motor going downhill. And one of the things I actually like about mountain biking is the climbing. It's a great workout. You can stop, take in the views. You're more aware of your environment. It just feels more natural, and it's just really cool when you're high up in the mountains and can hear nature. It's quiet, peaceful. It's a really nice getting back to nature experience. But the best part about climbing for me is the sense of accomplishment at the top. You do a 4,000, 5,000 foot climb. Yay, you've done something. And that's what I miss most about eMTBing. Even if I turn my Levo to its lowest setting, all the way down to 10% of motor output, I'm still working less than my lowest mountain bike gear. It's just the nature of the beast. The pedal boost is always there. And maybe this is my old school me talking, so I'm kind of throwing it out there for what it's worth, but to me, it's a factor. And when I run this sense of accomplishment by most eMTBers, they just laugh. They talk about pedaling 3 times further, getting in more laps, and having just as much fun on the downhill and so on. So maybe I'm kind of out of touch with the sport these days. But on the other hand, when I mention it to my old school riding buddies, they immediately know what I'm talking about, sense of accomplishment. And then there's the difference between riding with other MTBers and with e-bikers. I assume this would simply be a matter of reducing my speed to match regular bikes, but that turns out to be harder than it sounds, at least for me. My best ride buddy is a former racer, a really strong rider who always just creams me on the climbs. But if I'm on my Turbo Levo Pro, I find that to match his speed, I'm barely pedaling, even in my lowest setting. I'm not even getting a workout. This mileage, of course, will vary from rider to rider. And I've talked to eMTBers who say, e-bike is the only way they can keep up with their friends on regular bikes. But for me, at least, it really hasn't worked to mix and match. Then there's the issue of trail management. We're still in the early stages of eMTB adoption. As e-bike use becomes more widespread, we may see management issues arise, both predictable and unpredictable. It's not just a matter of numbers. eMTB technology is going to keep expanding from longer lasting batteries to more powerful more powerful motors. And right now the focus is on class 1 e-bikes. They don't have a throttle and they have a top speed of 20 miles an hour. I have to think that's going to change though. The industry right now is focusing on torque numbers and battery power, but everything else is going to start going up too. A lot of observers think this is a pretty slippery slope, and we'll eventually see a blending of mountain biking with moto technology and e-bikes that are quite a bit more powerful than the ones we have now. And in my mind, this would accentuate the difference between the two even more, and create a sort of separate but equal ridership with its own rules, regulations, trail access, maybe own trail networks. Just as an aside, I had to laugh when I saw a popular gray trail this summer posted with a no e-bikes request, signed by anonymous trail builders, of course. But when the builders push back against eMTBs, there's pretty significant wear and tear factor going on. Again, maybe it's a separate sport. But so what about lightweight, cross-country style eMTBs? Well, I've talked to a lot more riders who have gone from lightweight to burly on e-bikes than the other way around. The reasons is that the lightweight bikes don't have the oomph to keep up with their pals on the big bikes. I think riders have kind of concluded if you really want lightweight, why not just ride your regular bike? Also, it should be noted that lightweight for an eMTB is still typically 40 pounds. So you're sacrificing power for really not that much benefit in lighter weight. And that kind of brings up another point. When I'm out riding on my e-bike, I'm always striking up conversations with other riders. And to my surprise, I found a handful who've given eMTB a whirl and actually gone back to regular bikes. They're not anti-eMTB. They're not even old school. A couple of them are younger, 30-somethings. They would just rather stick with pedal only. And this flies in the face of all forecasts, I know, but it shows there may still be a place for regular MTBs. Now, still, if you step back and look at it from a big picture standpoint, I think pure cold logic tells you we're headed for a world where everyone's riding eMTBs of some flavor. A recent Pink Bike poll got right at the heart of this issue, and it said if all else were equal, weight, handling, cost, so on, would you get a mountain bike with a motor or would you stick with non-motorized? You guessed it, by far the majority said, hey, we'll take the motor. And what this says to me is, like it or not, eMTBs are going to take over the sport of mountain biking. What we'll have is just a whole lot more variety, not from like slightly pedal assist to full-on e-moto bikes that have throttles and high torque and everything you'd expect in a motorcycle. So, that's kind of my take. What do you think? Will e-bikes swallow up mountain bikes? Will there be separate paths for each? I'm always up for comments. Thanks, and whether you're battery powered or not, I hope to see you out on the trail.